Hello! Today we're looking at upgrading the solar setup and experimenting with what can be run using cheap DIY solar power. In previous videos I built the battery and set it up with solar panels and a charge controller. A kilowatt of solar panels are propped up outside, so if you've got a bit of space in your garden or a small shed roof, this project's for you. You don't need to build your own battery as they're available pre-built online from websites such as EcoWorthy. If you want to guarantee the quality of the cells, or need a specific voltage, then self-building is worth investigating. If you want to be able to run high power devices, then it's best to go for a higher voltage battery, so thinner wires can be used. The most common high voltage for inverters and solar controllers is 48 volts, but 12 volts is fine for smaller loads. My battery is 72 volts nominal, so I had to get this inverter made to order from China. It's quite cheap for its claimed power output, at £180 including delivery, and is available in virtually any voltage you can imagine. I'll put a link in the description. If you choose a lower voltage battery than mine, your choice of inverter will be much bigger. After soldering an XT90 plug with additional connector for spark reduction resistors, I mounted the inverter onto the wall next to the solar controller. Then beneath it mounted a multi-socket for ease of access. The socket on the inverter is Type I, as used in China and Australia. The wires from the solar panels come in at the bottom left corner of the board. They're connected in series into the charge controller. The solar controller is from Make Sky Blue and is available in many different voltages. If you'd like to know more about it, please see my previous videos. I connected one of these neat little power meters in line with the inverter to enable logging of energy consumption. They work at up to 200 volts and are available with either a 50 amp or 100 amp shunt. There's also an AC version which I find quite handy. I then connected the inverter, remembering to connect the spark suppressor connection first. On a more permanent setup, spark arresters are less important, but because I need to disconnect the battery regularly, it's best in this case to use them. The display on the inverter shows battery voltage, output and output power. The first thing I tested was a fan heater. I used this as a load to determine battery capacity. I discharged the battery from full to 80% discharged. I then took a reading from the inline meter, which shows that at 1 kilowatt discharge rate, the battery has 2.9 kilowatt hours capacity. So it took almost 3 hours to discharge. From this we can determine how long any load could take to discharge the battery. It also gives me a baseline so I can test again in future and get a reasonably accurate gauge of battery degradation. By this point I was starting to get a bit hungry, so I plugged in an electric hob. It took 130 watt hours to cook an egg. I think I could probably fit 3 eggs in this pan, so that means the full capacity of the battery could cook 67 egg sandwiches. The table saw took 5 watt hours to cut a piece of wood. That works out at 580 pieces of wood. To allow the solar controller and inverter to be connected at the same time, I soldered up an adapter. This took 34 watt hours, so that's 85 adapters. Obviously once the solar panels are connected, the limit goes up. The panels make up to 3.5 kilowatt hours a day, but they only get 4 hours of sun a day. So if you've got a better place to put them, you should expect to get more. Here's a more realistic use of the system: a computer, a light and a fridge. In an emergency situation, the battery alone could run for 48 hours continuously. Domestic fridges can be more efficient, so could possibly last longer. With the solar panels connected, it could run indefinitely. The reason I chose the 72 volt system was because I could use it to run my motorcycle. If I was just doing solar with a stationary battery, I'd have probably used a 48 volt pack. Although all the equipment I'm using is available in 48 volt versions, running at 48 volts gives you much more choice. For example, this nice quality Victron inverter is only available in 48 volts. At some point I might run a cable from the inverter into the house, but for now I can take power anywhere I need using these 48 volt e-bike batteries. A 48 volt system would also allow you to use just 2 solar panels. Here's my indoor system. I can run the whole place for about 6 hours from one small e-bike battery. If I used a less powerful PC and turned some of the lights off, it could last much longer. I run the battery into a splitter and connect the inverter and a 13.8 volt DC to DC converter. I used the DC to DC converter to power my wireless communication system, another system that requires zero infrastructure. The inverter has a multi-socket connected with a cable going off to this changeover switch. This allows me to run all the main lights off the battery. For a given amount of power, I believe this type of setup would be cheaper and superior to other kits available online. The 360 watt solar panels cost £100 each from a local installer. I've seen them on eBay for between £120 and £160. The Make Sky Blue charge controller is also around £100. And the Victron inverter is £120. The battery is the most expensive bit, but if you can build your own, you can guarantee cell quality and save some money. My small 48 volt pack has Molicel 21700 cells in and cost around £250. That's a total of £670 for 720 watts of solar and half a kilowatt hour of storage at 48 volts. I wouldn't expect it to pay for itself in the near future based on electricity production alone, but if you view it as an emergency backup system, cost is less relevant. If you can find secondary uses for your battery, it makes more financial sense. Because I'm using electricity to replace petrol, the payback time is much shorter. In the last few months since getting the solar setup, I've done 1500 miles without plugging into the mains at all. In total, the battery's covered 3000 miles. Well, that's about it for now. I hope I've given you a few ideas for your own setup. If you've got any questions, please ask in the comments. Thanks very much to all the new subscribers, it's good to know you guys are finding this interesting. If there's anything you'd like me to get into more detail about, please let me know, and I'll see you next time.